I think we're doing really well time-wise if we just keep the ball moving here. Waiting on, oh, Ms. Kopp, she's back. And Kyle, would you like to get into 5B, public hearing?
Yes, this is ordinance number 18-23-LC. An ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, amending the official zoning map as referenced in the Land Development Code, section 7.12.01A2. Zoning maps to include a change in the zoning designation of an 11.543 acre area of land located on U.S. Highway 98, Destin, Florida, from commercial general, CG, to town center mixed use, TCMU, providing for authority, providing for findings of fact, providing for jurisdiction, providing for a zoning map amendment, providing for incorporation into the Land Development Code, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. This is a second reading, and it's a quasi-judicial hearing, so if I could have the applicants stand up to be sworn in by the city clerk. At this time, I'll turn it over to Ms. Kopp.
This is the second reading of the ordinance you've already heard, and we don't have anything new to add unless the applicant wants to speak.
Just here for questions.
Mr. Destin.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, so guys, I really don't have issue with what necessarily you've proposed. My biggest issue is what assurances that the city would have should we go through with the rezone tonight. And the issue goes with the density increases, because I have a lot of heartburn with TCMU. We covered that at the last meeting. My feelings on it are that, you know, I don't have a development application right now. I know I saw your designs are fine, and what you propose is not something that I have a whole lot of heartburn with. But I don't have, from a city standpoint, any assurances that, let's say you close on the property, we've given you the increases in density, and you guys sell it to a different developer, different group. If that developer comes in and changes what you had intended, because he now can access an extra, I think we counted somewhere around 90 extra units, because we've done the switch, you know, this council would have a lot of heartburn over that. We'd catch a lot of heartburn from a lot of the folks that are in our constituents. So what my proposal tonight is to make a motion that we table the item until our TCMU meeting that we've set in February, I believe, 23rd. It's the Flume workshop that will include the TCMU discussion, and but simultaneously instruct staff and the land use attorney to explore and research any avenue that we can use alternative to rezoning that would allow these gentlemen to get their designation for long-term rental use. It's just, I can't do it right now without any assurances and no development application, and so that's the motion.
Second.
Got a motion, got a second. Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mayor.
I have a question.
My original thought when we first discussed this was to just change the TCMU to allow for long-term rentals. Apparently that's going to be a cumbersome process where we have to go send it.
It's the commercial general, I think, right now, right, that would need to be changed.
Yeah. So just to change commercial general to long-term rentals to allow it, but we can do it, but it's going to require the same process we went through when we changed the comp plan, correct? So legally, can we, and I hope you say yes, but legally, is there any way we can put a condition on their DO to hold them to 16 units per acre instead of the 24? I'm sorry? If
We do a developer's agreement?
That would be something I would discuss with the applicants. We could discuss that if they wanted to volunteer to do that.
Guys, what's your timeline to do due diligence to execute your contract, your purchase agreement? You want to come up? One of you could answer that. Because our meeting is on February 26th.
Okay.
I think our concern with February 26th is that that can turn into July 26th before we know it. And that's our primary concern there, which would really, I mean, add, you know, how much time?
Yeah, we just don't, I mean, we would be out of time on the contract and would have to put significant money at risk by the end of February. And I don't think we probably
I'm trying to
have an
think
answer
of,
by then.
so if we have 192 units, let me do some math here. What are we? We're 192 and we're at 11 and a half acres. We are 16.69 acres right now.
16.69 units per acre.
Yeah, units per
Yep.
acre. Assuming that the right-of-way we have to donate, which the city city planning staff has said would count towards our density.
Almost half of what, the potential.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I got heartburn with that too, but
Yeah.
we'll let
Wait,
some of these
wait,
other people talk.
Clarify what you have heartburn with?
The
I'm
fact
not
that what
following
they
right now.
presented is way under what
No,
Mr. Destin's worried about. You
So-
know,
so-
I mean,
But-
we're gonna
but you
kill,
can But you can present anything, Mayor. There are no legal guarantees that they can't change their mind. That's a legitimate concern. And these guys seem great, and I'm not accusing them of some sort of artifice, but if they go and sell it to somebody else and they come, there is nothing that will bind them legally to sticking with what these guys propose.
Look, and if these guys are sincere in the fact that these plans are what they intend to build, then I'm sure they would have no problem putting a deed restriction or a condition on their DO to keep it at 16 units per acre. Like and if that's the heartburn that's going to keep this council from passing it, there has to be a way to do that without going into our flume. And I mean, can't we just come up with a legal agreement to be? And to me, it's ridiculous. All I want to do is change commercial general to long-term rentals.
which
I
is what
think-
we talked about. We talked about promoting our town center in the first place before these guys even
Yeah, and
stepped up to the plate to even ask us to rezone. We were talking about rezoning that entire area to town center in the first place.
When we made the comp plan changes, I remember I had a conversation with someone, my one concern was town center mixed use, the units per acre allowable there, because my concern was that the movie theater property was gonna be turned into apartments like behind Walmart, because those are like 24, 25 units per acre. That's the density you're looking at, and I thought that would be not good for Destin to have that big property on Main Street and 98 to turn into apartments like that, and obviously that's a really profitable development, and that's why we're seeing it. But I can't control what people build. I mean, but regardless, it seems like there has to be a simple fix. We're not asking for a lot here. We're asking to change 6 months leases
Well,
to
it's frustrating to me that you got some people coming in here that want to purchase a piece of property, gonna pay taxes on it. They're gonna develop something that's gonna increase our tax base tremendously. And if they did build more than 16 units, it would increase our tax base even more. I mean, that would be the worst case scenario, because they're talking about having commercial properties at the front, so that doesn't, the appearance on 98, their lifestyle centers is gonna be off Highway 98. So, I don't know. Like I said, we're trying to dot i's and cross t's and get guarantees, stuff like that. It's just frustrating to me that we're gonna stifle and strangle business because of some concept or lack of, or a visioning issue, when we don't have any vision anyways. We tried to have a visioning session, and a couple of people complained that it was a waste of time.
It was awful. That was,
Well,
no, it wasn't. I promise you.
I guarantee you right now, I could ask every single one of you what you want Destin to look like 5 years, and not one of you could tell me what it looks like,
Oh,
because I
could
can't
do-
tell you what
could-
I think it should look
I
like.
could, and I could do it a lot better than what
Mayor,
we
let's get
hashed
back on
out.
topic.
All right, so we gotta, you're correct. So you want to table it? I got some people that want to talk. You want to hold that off just and let them weigh in?
No, I mean, discussion's open, let's go.
Okay, because if we table it, it's over. All right. For the people that are online here to discuss, do you need these gentlemen to stand at the podium, or would you let them sit down for a minute and we'll bring them back up if we need them? just so you guys don't feel like you're hung out to dry. Just sit in the front row right there. All right? First up, next is Kyron.
Well, I'm getting the feeling that Chatham is where I was last meeting since he wasn't here. The way I see it is this: they can't give us a DO until they get us to give us to change the zoning so that they have something to go on. Otherwise, why would they want to buy the property if they can't develop it the way they want to develop it? And okay, the mayor just said the same thing. So if they add more if they added more units than what they say they're going to add, that's more tax base for us. We're trying to discern. We have little pieces of property here and little pieces of property there that are not in the same, that need to be in one spot. They've been spot zoned, and we're trying to fix that situation in this way. Plus, we're gaining a road. We're gaining an access road that we need to get, again, back toward Airport Road and the areas back there. I don't have a heartburn with it. I made the motion the last time, and I'll make a substitute motion that we go with the recommended motion that we approve the ordinance tonight on second reading.
I got a substitute motion. Do I have a second? You're 0 for 2, Kyron. All right, let's see, I have Rodney and Steve, did you want to speak? You're next then. I punched you out on my little button. Rodney, go
Thanks,
first.
Mayor. I've been asking myself this question for a while, a few years, actually. Tonight we talk about the short-term rentals. Everybody wants to build 5, 6, 7,000 square foot homes and pack 40 people in them. And, everybody on the harbor, they're trying to cram, everything they possibly can on one little bitty piece of property to try to make as much money as they can. Anybody ever comes to town, to Destin, that's all they're coming here for, is just try to make as much money as they possibly can, because there's a lot of money here, and leave. And you hear Mr. Marler mention it several times, especially when we hired a group to come in for our comp plan. We'll hire city managers. He always refers to our heritage. What are you going to do to preserve our heritage? And Destin, that's one of our biggest things, is the quality of life. We're always talking about quality of life. We want to make sure we have great quality of life for everybody and our citizens, and preserve our heritage. Well, when in the hell does that come into play? Because it sure doesn't come into play since the last 3 or 4 years that I know of. You hear tonight that, well, we want to build, 40, 50 units per acre because we get the tax base, and that's what this place is, run off of, and our tourism. We need to pack as many as we can in these homes, to get the bed tax, and because that's, I make my living off tourism, but when does the quality of life and, preserving our heritage that, that we're all, sitting up here talking about, we need to preserve, quality of life for our citizens of Destin. It's like we're talking out both sides of our mouth, So when does that come into play? When do, you start to consider that and not try to shove, 10 pounds of crap in a 5-pound bag? I've just had a hard time with it. And that's why I vote no on a lot of things, because, that's what we tell our people and our citizens that we want to do is have quality of life here in Destin, have a beautiful place for people to come visit. And then we turn around and do just the opposite. But, that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor. At the last meeting, if you recall, I asked one of these gentlemen what the timeline was. We didn't get an answer last time, but I appreciate that tonight. I agree with Mr. Destin in the sense that nothing disparaging on these gentlemen, but we don't know what's going to happen if we approve it. Historically, there have been other things that have happened in this city where the council has given a seal of approval on something and it didn't go the way it was planned. Something I would ask y'all to consider, we have that workshop planned. If nothing else, so that we could possibly accommodate these gentlemen, why don't we get the workshop and change the date on that? Because what happens in that workshop may or may not impact what we're doing on this.
Can I?
You know what-
Could I just get some clarification on how this workshop's gonna solve the problem? That's an honest question. I don't know how we'll be able to accommodate.
I'm the one who
their-
suggested the workshop, so let me explain my thought process, and maybe I can answer your question and Steve's. The workshop, I don't intend necessarily to affect these gentlemen at all. What my intent is in tabling this is to give staff, that's why it was a double motion. Motion to table, because I don't want to put it to second reading and then rezone. But secondly, I instructed staff and the land use attorney to come up with some other vehicle, some other mechanism, either a developer agreement, some sort of readjustment to general commercial. If it takes a couple months to change and amend general commercial to allow the long-term use, then that's fine. Secondarily, I want to have our workshop because the mayor's points are somewhat truthful with regards to what we want to see from a vision standpoint in town center mixed use. And without getting too ahead of ourselves on that workshop, my biggest heartburn is shared with what Mr. Morgan said earlier with regards to, wait a second, why do we have such high densities set up in our town center mixed use? At the end of the day, the only thing that's going to come will be like Rodney said. We're going to have a bunch of developers coming in. If they have high densities, they're going to cram as many units per acre as they can, and you will get these 3-story style sea glass apartment complexes, or you'll get bigger ones with parking garages attached to it. I have a fundamental issue overarching with why our code would encourage that instead of single-family residential homes that actually have a yard, because we have an issue with retaining long-term residents in Destin. You cannot put down roots and live in one of those apartments that they're talking about. Nobody wants to live in that full-time and have a family. These people will be transitory who will live in the housing that our code will be encouraging. That is why it's so important to go back and reassess, why does town center mixed use encourage sea glass apartment style complexes instead of something more like what's back in Kel Air, or at least single-family residential homes, because that's how you're going to gain more long-term residents, which is, we all, I think, agree is what we need. So that's where the spirit of this motion comes from. So yes, it's a motion to table, but it also includes an instruction to staff to help find these guys a quick avenue so that they can go and get the clothes that they need on their property so that they can go and build what they've proposed.
So a solution to your problem would be to make a comp plan amendment to reduce the density in town center mixed use. I mean, that's the only solution. If you in fact want to prohibit sea glass style apartments, you're still going to get apartments, but they're not going to be quite as dense as sea
We're going to
glass.
have a conversation at the workshop that may discuss, that will likely talk about lowering the densities and how do we encourage, we'll get with Lewis to come up with a code that more accurately reflects, if the goal happens to be of this council to have single-family residential homes developed in the town center mixed-use area rather than sea glass apartment style buildings, then yes, we would have to do a comp plan amendment at that time to change that so that future applicants, not these gentlemen in particular, would be encouraged to buy property to build probably subdivisions. But I see a waiver from my from legal counsel, so I'll give her the floor.
Yes, because I just spoke with the applicants, and they've actually requested that we continue the item until the meeting on February 4th to allow them time to get approval from the owner to volunteer some conditions for the property. So if you all are willing to do that, we can do that tonight.
I have a comment, but Ms. Ramswell, did you still want to go?
Actually, I have a question, Mr. Lewis, if you would mind kind of clarifying for me. When I look at the current TCMU designation and the current commercial general designation, and I look at the fact that for commercial general, we go by a 2.5 FAR, and when TCMU, we've got a 26.0 maximum density with a 0.4 squared FAR. What is the difference unit-wise between the two? Does TCMU allow for more units than the commercial general does?
Not necessarily. What the major difference between the two districts, the way the comp plan is set up now, is that there's more creativity in the TCMU for pedestrian-oriented amenities and all those type of enhancements. So depending on the size of your lot and the way it's shaped, you may maximize, but you may equally not maximize that level. Whereas in the general commercial, you simply do what you're entitled. There is not that flexibility in terms of creativity between the city and the developer.
My follow-up then would be based on what Ms. Kopp said after speaking with you guys. February 4th, now, we're still not going to have had our meeting, so we wouldn't have rezoned anything. So is that something that we need to take into consideration so that they don't have to come back yet again?
I think their concern is the timing because of their pending contract to purchase the property. They're not wanting to wait. They only have until the end of February to decide what to do at the end of their due diligence period. So if they can get the approval from the higher-ups at their company to volunteer some conditions, they would then be able to rezone and satisfy the concerns that some council members expressed tonight.
And we can work with them as far as looking at what their proposal would be, and then comment on those proposals and share our comments with you.
Okay, great. We have a motion already on the floor, correct? For the original motion?
The original motion was mine, which was to table the item and instruct the staff to work with the applicant.
Yeah, until the workshop date of February 26th. So now we're
Right.
just asking to change that to continue the rezone second reading to February 4th.
I'm fine with that.
Mr. Destin, are you going to amend your motion
Yeah,
then?
motion's amended to continue the item till February, did you say 4th?
We had the second on that, you agree with that?
Second.
Okay, you agree with it, the change? You good? All right, before we take this to the vote, I think everybody, I'm just gonna go on public record that right now in that present designation, you can have higher density with short-term rentals, which is exactly what you're totally against. And so it's so ironic to me that you're worried about whether they go with 16 or 24 units, I think, the max, when under the GCI right now, you could put twice as many in there, but they'd be short-term rental, which is exactly what you don't want. So it's almost ludicrous to me that we're not going to pass this ordinance with that rationale. Because they're saying what they're going to build at 16.2 units per acre, which is way less than they could under TCMU, but it's a hell of a lot less than what they could do under the present zoning requirement right now. And under the present zoning, it would be all short-term rentals of less than 6 months, correct?
I think the concern is that once they get a rezoning, they can go up to whatever the maximum of the zoning
24.
district is.
That's right.
Right, yes.
Right now, but under the commercial, it's even higher than that, correct?
No, it's lower.
It's lower.
It's lower
But
under,
but it's short-term.
yes.
All right. If you guys are ready to vote, or Rodney, you want to? Hold on, Ray, let me ask Ray.
I just have to ask a question. Will the second reading being continued to February 4th, or will there be any changes that will affect the title of the ordinance, which we have to re-advertise?
We will let you know.
Okay.
And this is a public hearing, so we'll have the public hearing portion of it before we vote even for his motion to table, okay? Continue. Okay, well, Mr. Braden, you have the floor.
I just have a question for staff. Can we, I was under the impression that the 16.2, whatever it was fine, or they were okay with that. Can we not do a developer's agreement for that piece of property for that amount so that we know that they're not going to go in there and build?
It's not something that we would want to require, but if they're going to volunteer it, we could. And that's what they are looking to do. They want to get permission from the higher-ups in their company to be able to volunteer to do that for the city.
Okay, thank you.
So my question is based on the fact where you just said we'll get back to him. Is that going to require council a vote to,
No, not to write the title of the ordinance, no.
okay.
All right, and this is a public hearing, so before we vote on the motion in the second, does anyone want to come up to the microphone and make a comment about this second reading of this ordinance? Seeing none? Seeing none, let's go ahead and take this to a vote. We have a motion, we have a second. Motion to table is unanimous, so moved.
Motion to continue.
Motion continue, I'm sorry for my mistake. Motion to continue, so.
Yeah, a motion to continue is just to a date certain.
All right, gentlemen, so we'll see you again soon. All right. City manager. Yeah, consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are 3 items on the consent agenda this evening, and staff is available to answer any questions you may have.
I'll make the motion to accept A, B, and C.
So motion? We have a second. Any comment? Seeing none? So moved. You one for 3. Mr. Braden.
We're doing good. Let's keep it rolling, Mayor.
Ms. Ramswell.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to let everybody know that the Destin High School plans are moving forward. We've made significant progress, and in fact, we actually have a financial consultant who is coming into town tomorrow specifically to look at various properties and make some selections and hopefully negotiations, and we'll take it from there. But moving along, and we're all thrilled to death. And we're also going to be meeting with the chamber on Monday. So good news all around, things moving forward.
Hey, there's an active Facebook debate on what the mascot should be.
Good, I like that. What, you know what the top choice is so far?
Oh, they've had all kinds of interesting ones. Some are ludicrous, but they've had some pretty good ones to go, like the Sharks, we already got the Marlins and the Dolphins, but Sharks and several other ideas.
Cool, thanks. I didn't know that.
I think we should be called the Destin Crosswalks.
Yeah, there you go. I think it's on the Facebook page.
Maryland's already got the turtle thing. I like Mako. All right, Mr. Menchel.
Thank you. I have 2 things, Mayor. First of all, I wanted to just give a shout out to the city staff and the city manager. I had contacted them, one with a code compliance issue and 2 safety issues, and they jumped right on it, so I just want to say thank you very much. The second thing, I'll go back to my Public Works, Public Safety days, and we had several briefings from FDOT about the Triple R and the road resurfacing down towards the bridge, down towards Emerald Graham. And every one of those briefings, they spoke to us about starting in August. And it's my understanding, information I received, that they're now looking to start in February. Don't know if anybody knows that or not, but they assured us it wasn't going to be until August to alleviate the bottleneck and the complete confusion downtown. So I'm concerned about if, in fact, it is going to be February, when all along they said it was going to be in August.
February is the last date that I was told.
That's problematic, and I'd like to just discuss it. I don't know that we can change it. Obviously, they're on their own agenda type thing, but that is certainly, and again, we want the stuff, but it's going to be a nightmare down there, reduced to 1 lane or something during the peak season, if you will.
Mr. Minchell, would you support having Lance draft a letter asking them to take that accommodation and urge them to set it for August?
If that's along, if everybody
Is
else
that something
goes
you
with
could do?
that, that'd be
Okay.
great. All right.
I believe that they do plan to do the work at night already, so that's already in their plan.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing tonight, Mr. Mayor. Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Mr. Destin?
Alrighty. So I had brought it up last council meeting to discuss creating some legislative provisions for having the collection of parking fees at the exit versus the entrance point to any private pay-for-parking facility that's in the city of Destin. I'll put a motion on the floor to instruct staff to research the issue and propose an ordinance. And if I get a second, then we'll have some discussion.
Sure, I'll go ahead and second it.
Okay, I got a motion, got a second. Any discussion? Pretty cut and dried. We'll wait and see what they come up with.
Mr. Featherston, did you want to speak on the issue at all?
Just to remind you that we would like to work with you or with the staff, and I know we're the major when we have the magnifying glass on us, so we would definitely will work with staff, and whenever they want to meet, we'll meet with them and give them what information we have available as to traffic counts and all the information that we can gather or we have gathered. So more than willing to do that.
Yeah, and I'd also encourage the contact the other property owners along the harbor that are doing paid parking as well. Participate in that discussion. I know they do it at Brotula's and at Tail Fins and on certain occasions at AJ's. So staff might want to reach out to them. Okay, Mr. Marler.
The only thing I was going to comment on is that I think we should hold off on this until after we've had our discussion on our own parking lots and decide if that's the way we want to go with our own parking lots and then go from there, because I think if we're going to do this, if it's going to go this way, then the city should be the first to do it and see how it works and then go from there. That's my only comment.
Okay, got a motion, got a second? See no further discussion? Ayes have it, so moved. Morgan.
Thank you, Mayor.
The only thing I got, and I talked to Mr. Destin about this previously, so he wasn't blindsided, is now that the power company purchase has taken place and is complete, what I'd like to do is maybe the first meeting in March to allow Shep and Councilman Destin time to have their negotiations with them, give us a presentation report on where we stand on the right to purchase agreement and or a franchise agreement. So if you would do that, Lance, I think now that they really couldn't do anything while everything was up in the air, but Mr. Destin told me that they have been in contact, and that's what he felt like that would be a good timeline, correct?
So, Chef and I had reached out to Gulf Power after the acquisition, as we wanted to be as anxious as possible to continue the negotiations, and we're told that basically they were very receptive, wanted to meet, but of course, logistically, their house was in a bit of a disarray with the changing of the guard. So now that they have their new CEO and staff, senior staff members, I believe they're going to be reaching out with us within a week to set a date to meet, to discuss within February where we're at, where we want to be, how far away we are, and we'll give you a full report as soon as we can.
All right, thank you. And if the first meeting in March, if there's a delay, just let Lance know and we'll bump it to the next meeting. Just give the people an update. And that's all I got. Ms. Kopp?
Just an update as to the TRC process. We have not received any applications since the last update in January, so there will not be a February meeting, and the next TRC meeting will therefore be March 21st.
All right, and City Attorney.
Yeah, I have an update for everybody on the East Pass administrative action. I'm also going to ask you to take some action on this in the form of a motion tonight. So on Tuesday last week, Mayor, you were there, but the county commission met and considered the Sherry settlement offer. Essentially, it's a little more complicated than this, but the offer is for the sand to be split 50-50 between Destin and Okaloosa Island, assuming that we can't get all the GAP properties signed up to get to Reach 2, with Okaloosa Island receiving the sand before Destin would. The county commissioners voted to accept that settlement agreement and instructed the attorney to negotiate a final written settlement agreement with Donovan and the Sherrys. What wasn't really discussed at that meeting, but practically speaking, the settlement agreement is going to be contingent upon FDP's acceptance. In fact, I believe that they are actually trying to make FDP a party to that agreement. The reason for that is because FDP really has the final authority on where the sand goes. FDP is bound by the statute, which requires the sand be placed on the adjacent eroding beaches. Because of that, it's not a guarantee that FDP will accept the settlement agreement. If FDP does not accept it, and in fact they disapprove of the agreement, then we would need to make sure that Destin is in a position to act as quickly as possible to get that East Pass dredged. So what I'm going to ask you tonight is that you consider making a motion essentially that states, in the event that FDP does not approve the settlement agreement between Okaloosa County and the Sherrys, that the city attorney and special counsel Ken Ortell are directed to take action to ensure the East Pass is dredged as promptly as possible, including applying or petitioning FDP for an emergency order allowing for the dredging of the East Pass. And we've explored this possibility a little bit, and we think it can be done.
So moved.
Let me let somebody read it for city clerk purposes.
Go ahead, Parker.
Ray, if you're ready, I think I got it. I move that in the event that FDP does not approve of the settlement agreement between Okaloosa County and Donovan and the Sherrys, the city attorney and special counsel Ken Ortell be directed to take action to ensure that East Pass is dredged as promptly as possible, including filing a petition for an emergency order from FDEP allowing for immediate dredging of the East Pass.
A second.
Okay, I got a motion, got a second, and I think what also comes into play here is this, a big reason behind the settlement for Okaloosa County is that the Corps of Engineers will provide the $1.5 million for the dredging costs versus having to take it out of TDC coffers. Mr. Tadlock, you're here. Could you give us a quick update before we take this to a vote on where we're at with our GAP properties?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Guy Tadlock, and Lance, I've not gotten an update lately on the 18 property owners. Do you have an update on that now?
I'll update real quick. Greg Stewart and I did work towards some language on that easement that we thought because the property owners were skeptical of executing it as it existed, they wanted some more protection, so we worked on additional language. And we're also working with Oceana's attorney in drafting language acceptable to Oceana. So.
Yeah, and I think that the language that Cal and Mr. Bowman and Mr. Stewart are working on is going to really help. As we talked to some of the GAP owners, there was a little bit of a misunderstanding of what was going on. I think this new language is going to help. The big challenge we've got is we've got a deadline that's pretty much on the horizon. So we're going to have to really work this thing hard and work it quick.
I will say that the county kind of artificially imposed a February 1st deadline. In my opinion, that's not a hard deadline because we have until the dredger actually gets here. But the county does have that on the table, and the county seems to feel that it can control where the sand goes, which in my opinion it cannot.
Okay, we'll still work real hard to that date.
Hey, that gives us something to shoot for. Thanks, Guy. And I've been following that email thread between all, Guy and you guys. So we just keep pounding away at it. We got to get it dredged one way or the other. Apparently my emergency declaration didn't impress nobody, did it? All right. You got anything else, Kyle?
We got to vote.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion, we have a second. There you go, Mr. Bowman. Unanimous, so moved.
And I also just have something else more minor on the East Pass. But as you know, the Sherry's administrative action was previously dismissed by FDEP. They had leave to amend and were supposed to do so by last week. They did not amend. Instead, they filed a motion for extension of time to file their amendment. I'm requesting another motion from somebody to allow us to file a document opposing that extension of time.
Mr. Destin, you're so prepared.
Yeah, thanks. I move to direct the city attorney and special counsel Ken Ortell to file a document with FDEP opposing granting Donovan and the Sherrys additional time to amend their petition, preventing the city from dredging the East Pass.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none? Vote is unanimous, so moved. Kyle, last thing on that is, after we get this pass dredged, we really need to work with the FDEP and ironclad all this stuff out so we can act, the city of Destin can act in a more standalone capacity to take care of that dredge with dealing with the Corps of Engineers in Florida.
To that end, Ken Ortell and I have been planning on ways to avoid this in the future, and that we can do this dredging more promptly, so.
I appreciate that. All right, seeing any, that's it. Meeting adjourned.